Civilized country, very good.
Well, Monday might be different. Our government's in a very tenuous position right here.
The CIA's.
No, not the CIA. It's more politics.
I just was told that the CIA is trying to create a party that is.
Between this and the exopolitics.
Super.
Looks serious.
Yeah,
Looks like being 60 years old. I mean,
We're rolling. Welcome. This is the last track 2 presentation of Xconference 2005. Well, I'm getting some feed. I want to go louder, but getting some feed. He'll balance it out. He'll balance it out. I'm a little tired. I don't know about you. In the first conference, we had 3 tracks, workshops, separate ticket, all that kind of stuff, but 2 days jammed in. Brutal. This time I organized it 2 tracks, but I went 3 days. No, too much. You get fried by Sunday, and then a lot of very good speakers are not getting the kinds of attendance they should have. We'll fix that next time. 2 tracks, 2 days, cocktail party on Friday night. I'm going to get it right the 3rd time. But of course, it was still a great conference, you understand. But we want to be a little less tired at the end, right? I'm bringing in very important people, and they travel long distances, and I want them to leave refreshed. That said, all right, this is an excellent way to finish up the presentation part of the individual speaking presentations. The panel, of course, was going to be a lot of the speakers will be there, and we're going to get into whatever happens. But a long time ago, in a planet far away, an organization was formed called NICAP. And it was at a time when there was a certain blush on the American rose, a confidence, a stride, sense of trust, accomplishment, well earned, well deserved. Tough times were ahead, but we could handle anything. And NICAP was formed and immediately became the #1 organization in the. Is that me? No, it's not me. Right? I'm gonna give someone a chance to grab that sucker. I could get adamant about that. Of course, I've already had mine go off 3 times during my introductions. You understand that? NICAP immediately became the most significant scientific group ever to explore the issue, because it was okay, it was all right, and so they got in there and they held a lot of meetings, and they had a lot of research, and they were building up a substantial. And there were some very prominent people, including Hillenkotter for a while. He had to leave after a while, but he was in there. I mean, it was heady days, at least for those that sort of knew what was going on. And then as things developed, it turned out that a whole bunch of prominent people and scientists having a group like that was kind of a liability to the truth embargo, and so it had to go. And as Ann Druffel describes well in her book, what we believe happened is a number of members of the CIA got on board positions, and I think they wouldn't have been limited because of that. But the point was they're going to get on, take it over, and shut it down, and that's exactly what they did. As it happened, James McDonnell's trajectory passed right through the heart of that little process, and NICAP was gone. And truly, and this is, I mean, no disrespect, of course, to Walt, no group of scientists at that type and that board has ever been assembled since. What did happen, though, is that MUFON was formed just before the end of NICAP, just before the end of James McDonnell, who couldn't bear that his government could possibly lie at that level, in my opinion, and it made it easier for him to make a tough decision. And MUFON took up the mantle, but in a whole different atmosphere. It wasn't 1952, 53, 48. It was late 1960s. And you remember what the the United States was like in the late 1960s. Everything was changing. And this issue was well contained by that point, and it would only get worse. And they started an organization called MUFON. Well, we know this. They had a much tougher time, and they were in a much more difficult arena to get the message out and draw in the people that were needed. And they did absolutely the best they could. And they did something else that was even more important. They persevered. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? And there was always that organization there, always those investigators, always that basic, almost mainstream point of reference. And the person that kept that together, without question, from the beginning, was Walt Andrus. And for that, he received the PRG Hall of Fame award last night. Well earned. Probably came a little late in the night for him. But sometimes you have to wait, right, for the things in life, including acknowledgement. But it was a pleasure to do that. He's retired from MUFON. John Schuessler, at least formal act. He's kind of an emeritus position. John Schuessler is doing a very fine job in giving MUFON some new life, though John is also got his problems right now. He's not feeling too good, but hopefully he'll be feeling better shortly. MUFON's still around. MUFON could yet become a major force again. We shall see. But all I can say is the people that put together NICAP and got it going were having fun. The people who put together MUFON traveled a hard, hard road, right? Not a road that I would want to travel. This man traveled it. He's bequeathed this to us, and it's great that we have the opportunity to hear a little bit about it from him now in 2005. So, Walter, please come forward.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve, and thank you for the award last night. I would like to say that Steve saved the best for the last, but no, we can't do that, because I've heard some fantastic lectures at this symposium, and Steve is to be congratulated for making that possible. I've been conducting MUFON's been running symposiums since 1970 with a meeting in Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, and our 36 is coming up, but we'll go into that more later. Give you a little background about MUFON. We'll include NICAP, and APRO, other organizations that have existed, but we're persevering and we're still rolling. Found on May 31st, 1969, the Mutual UFO Network is an international scientific organization composed of people seriously interested in studying and researching the phenomena known as unidentified flying objects, UFOs, by combining their mutual talents, areas of expertise, and investigating efforts. MUFON is the acronym for the Mutual UFO Network Incorporated, a Texas nonprofit corporation exempt from federal income tax under Section 501c3, and a publicly supported organization of the type described in Section 509A2 of the Internal Revenue Code. MUFON's mission is a scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of mankind. That seems like a big project, but it's just that simple. Now that we have identified ourselves, let's elaborate upon the goals of MUFON as a UFO investigative, research, and educational organization. The goals are as follows. 1, investigate UFO sightings and collect the data in the MUFON database for use by researchers worldwide. 2, promote research on UFOs to discover the true nature of the phenomena with an eye towards scientific breakthroughs and improving life on our planet. Point 3, educate the public on the UFO phenomena and its potential impact on society. MUFON as an organization does not make any claims to an official proclamation of what UFOs constitute, where they are from, how they are powered, and knowledge about the entities that have been observed in or near a hovering or landed UFO. Based on over 35 years of study, if there is one theory explaining this baffling mystery, I would personally tend to lean toward the extraterrestrial hypotheses. Being cognizant of the numerous other proposed theories, our three basic goals remain open-ended because we simply do not know all the answers. But who does? That's why we're here. A few individuals claim they have solved the UFO enigma. However, from our viewpoint, the challenge that constitutes the greatest mystery of the millennium is still beyond our grasp. Let's take a look now into the future. In 1903, the Wright brothers launched the first heavier-than-air motor-powered airplane at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, inaugurating an industry and an air transportation system that has grown in stature in just 102 years to producing sophisticated aircraft such as the F-117A, the B-2 bomber, and the new European 800-passenger Airbus. When we consider the significant progress in space travel that man has made since the advent of Russia's Sputnik in 1957, the possibilities for the future are only limited by man's ingenuity and resources. If we were to project our imaginations into the future for only another 50 years, that is out to 2055, we are opening up the door to manned or robot visits to the other planets in our solar system. By extrapolating man's accomplishments in space travel, it would not be difficult to visualize another civilization that is perhaps 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 years ahead of us in scientific progress and development. The daily visitations by these unique flying machines and their humanoid-appearing operators that we call UFOs would be commonplace for an advanced civilization. Even though the extraterrestrial hypothesis is only one of the many theories proposed to explain UFOs, I find this to be not only the most exciting possibility, but one of the most logical explanations when one analyzed the tens of thousands of UFO reports. In this symposium conference here, you've seen people, in fact all the lectures have leaned in that direction or provide information to substantiate that theory. Why they are conducting visits, performing various experiments, and abducting human beings for apparent genetic hybridization can only be answered by our visitors, leaving us to speculate and attempt to identify their self-serving purpose. And as Steve mentioned, why MUFON? Well, let's go into that. Founded in 1969, MUFON has grown to become the world's largest UFO membership organization during the intervening 36 years. Peaking at 5,300 in the middle 1990s, this solid growth has been no accident or fluke. Basically, it may be credited to the grassroots structure of the leadership, composed of dedicated volunteers who fully recognize the scientific importance of the challenges associated with the UFO phenomenon. When the recommendations of the University of Colorado study on UFOs under contract to the U.S. Air Force leaked out in 1969, it was obvious that Project Blue Book would be closed. Since Project Blue Book was no longer effective as a collection point for UFO sighting reports from the public, we felt someone should step in to fill this void. In 1969, a small group of UFO investigators and researchers in several Midwestern states, bordering Illinois and Missouri, were becoming disillusioned with the dictatorial management and operating philosophy of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, known as APRO. At the same time, we were questioning the future of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, that's NICAP, as Steve referred to, the largest UFO group in the United States, as a viable alternative organization for us to support. Yes, I have membership cards from both NICAP and APRO. Keep them for souvenirs. Let us briefly examine the attributes of the two prevailing UFO groups of that era, which helped us to influence our ultimate decision. For those of you who are new in the field, I think this may be of interest about APRO and NICAP. The Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, APRO, founded in January 1952 by a Wisconsin couple named Jim and Coral Lorenzen, was later moved to Alamogordo, New Mexico, and finally to Tucson, Arizona. In 1979, their major claim to fame was in being the oldest organization of its kind in the world, when their total membership was about 2,700 people, 10% of which were outside the United States. They published a monthly magazine titled APRO Bulletin, which is in reality bi-monthly since it was mailed in the same wrapper, save postage. Jim and Coral Lorenzen published a series of very reputable UFO books utilizing cases from the APRO file. Those cases are the ones that you and I and the rest, those of the old timers here, investigated, and they published them, which is good education, and they should be commended for that. They formed a group of field investigators possessively administered by the headquarters office in Tucson, Arizona. When they ventured into the area of state investigative organizations, it was short-lived. I organized the first Illinois state group for APRO, and we scheduled our first UFO conference in 1970 at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, something APRO had never previously accomplished. Jim and Coral Lorenzen immediately canceled all state organizations. Excuse me. I'd started one in New York State. They liked it for a moment. They unsuccessfully attempted to take jurisdiction over the Peoria meeting by expelling the host members from APRO. Immediately after the conference, there was a mass resignation of APRO members in the Midwestern states, signaling the decline of APRO as a significant organization. You may ask how I know the details of this distasteful confrontation with the Lorenzens. I was a co-state director for Illinois, chairman of the 1970 Peoria Conference, and the major recipient of their envious wrath over the intervening years. And it went on for years, believe me. Since neither Jim or Coral had ever had any professional managerial training or experience, they refused to relinquish or delegate responsibilities to others. It was thus fundamentally a two-person organization. When Mr. Lorenzen died in 1986 and Coral passed away in 1988, Robert G. Marsland, Deputy Director of APRO, officially announced the termination of the APRO Bulletin and the discontinuation of APRO. APRO 1952 to 1988. Thus, another era had passed into UFO organizational history. Now let's look at NICAP very briefly. The National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena was formed in 1956 and achieved national prominence in 1957 when the director, Major Donald E. Kehoe, U.S. Marine Corps, retired, acquired the services on its Board of Governors of such nationally known figures as Rear Admiral Delmer S. Farney, USN retired, former Chief of Navy Guided Missiles, and Vice Admiral Roscoe H. Hellencotter, USN retired, former Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. People in ufology sometimes think of the CIA as our enemy. No, they haven't been very helpful, but not an enemy. NICAP had a long and colorful history. At its peak in the 1960s, it had approximately 14,000 members and was receiving and investigating more reports each year than the U.S. Air Force, which had official responsibility for UFO investigation under Project Blue Book. Under Major Kehoe's leadership, NICAP was essentially an action organization, not a business, and it got definite results. It had formed a highly effective national and international investigation and information network, rivaling that of Air Force intelligence. During this prosperous period, Richard H. Hall was the assistant director to Major Kehoe. Richard still lives in Brentwood here in the area, and most of you, or all of you, probably know Richard. I'm sorry he isn't here for this symposium. People known to ufologists like Ted Blocher, Gordon Lohr, Don Berliner, who lives in the area, and Isabel Davis were employed by NICAP. However, the negative conclusions of the Condon Report in 1969 dulled public interest, and NICAP found itself fighting an uphill battle merely to survive. By about 1976, rumors were afloat that NICAP had put out feelers about merging with one or more UFO groups, and its declining resources were a matter of public record. In 1972, for example, it sustained a net operating loss of nearly $10,000, and its 1973 budget for general research was zero. The NICAP board in 1970 relieved Major Kehoe as director, and in 1973 appointed John L. Acuff to this post. And at one time they had their offices right here in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Initially not very well informed on UFOs, Acuff alienated the affiliate and subcommittee leaders who can constitute the backbone of the organization, and one by one they resigned and joined MUFON. Richard Hall later suffered a similar fate. Even though the scale of operations was drastically reduced and costs were cut, NICAP continued to publish their newsletter, The UFO Investigator. Mr. Acuff resigned as president in 1978 and was replaced in 1979 by Alan N. Hall, a retired CIA covert agent. A controversy arose concerning the alleged CIA connections of several then current board members. Please note that former CIA Director R.H. Hellencotter was still on the Board of Governors. The membership had now declined to about 2,000. The CIA had now apparently felt that they had silenced Major Keyhole for his dogged pressure and UFO cover-up accusations against the U.S. Air Force and Project Blue Book. With the congressional enactment of the Freedoms of Information Act, the FOIA, in 1976, we now know that Major Keyhole was right on target, but it was only attacking the tip of the iceberg. After recovering an estimated 7,000 documents under the Freedom of Information Act, MUFON had acquired evidence to prove that every military agency and every intelligence agency within the U.S. government had been involved in the study, investigation, meetings, reports, and publications on UFOs since the 1947-1948 era. Moving along, in 1973, Dr. Alan Hynek announced on the late-night NBC Dick Cavett TV show that he was forming a new organization to be known as the Center for UFO Studies, CUFOS. Just prior to the TV show, Dr. Hynek had called each of the directors of APRO, MUFON, and NICAP seeking their support. Only MUFON gave him a positive response. Dr. Hynek served as scientific director of CUFOS until his death in 1986. In January of 1982, the Board of Governors of NICAP resigned and a new board was elected, consisting of Sherman Larson, President, Fred Merritt, Vice President, and John Timmerman, Secretary-Treasurer, who were at that time board members of the Center for UFO Studies. As part of this transaction, the NICAP files were purchased and transferred to the home of Sherman Larson in Glencoe, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, where Sherm diligently resurrected these valuable archives. The former NICAP files are now a part of the research facility of CUFOS in Chicago. Incidentally, the APRO files are locked up in Phoenix, Arizona, and are not available. Young man and woman in Phoenix promised if they were given to them, they would make them accessible to the UFO research around the world to go through those files. Well, our government may lie to us, but we know that this couple also lied. They are locked up in a storage in a garage in Phoenix. Been several attempts made to either purchase or arrange to get those files and make them part of one of the existing organizations. We are still working on that, and we tried several times, once through Robert Bigelow in Las Vegas, Nevada. Both Richard Hall and Major Donald E. Keyhole joined the MUFON Board of Directors during the management reorganizations at NICAP. Richard Hall served as editor of the MUFON UFO Journal, our monthly magazine, from 1978 to 1983, and then became director of publications from 1985 to 1988. Major Keyhole was the director of governmental affairs from 1981 to 1988 when he passed away. Without their dedicated work, NICAP would never have grown to his stature in the 1960s. This is a tribute to Major Keyhole and Richard Hall. The MUFON organizational structure is arranged in the following manner, and why we exist as we do. If the Mutual UFO Network Incorporated, or MUFON, was to become a viable scientific UFO investigating organization and research group, it was essential that we analyzed and evaluated the two current major organizations. We would thus learn and benefit from their positive contributions to the study of ufology and the mistakes they made which resulted in their demise. Both APRO and NICAP were instrumental in keeping the subject of UFOs before the public, starting in the 1950s in their own respective ways. To be successful, it was essential that MUFON compose a set of bylaws that would prescribe in general terms how the organization would operate, its purpose, its goals, financial support considerations, and an organization to administer each of these aspects. Also, at the same time, keeping in mind the overall purpose for existing, the ultimate resolution of the UFO phenomena. We can never lose sight of that fact. We then addressed the question of why APRO and NICAP failed. In the case of APRO, it was simply a situation where neither Jim or Coral Lorenzen had sufficient managerial training or experience to recognize the need for in-depth management, a reluctance to delegate responsibility, and a total lack of human relations in dealing with volunteers. And of course that last was very important because everyone involved in UFOs is a volunteer. No one's making any money. On the other hand, NICAP established a strong hierarchy of competent individuals in Washington, D.C., started subcommittees in a few major cities, like Stanton Friedman was in the group in Pittsburgh, but failed miserably in business management. The influence of CIA personnel on the Board of Governors, and one as the director, the CIA covert agent, was a crowning touch that spelled NICAP's demise. MUFON has benefited from this analysis and has developed a corporate structure to avoid these pitfalls. We start out first with the basic person in MUFON, the top person. No UFO organization could function without having a team of trained field investigators, strategically located to interview and investigate UFO sighting reports. Without the data simulated by these dedicated people, there would be no need to provide an organization to support their services. The field investigators are MUFON's first line of contact with UFO witnesses and thus the essential facet of our grassroots structure. In order to have trained field investigators, we have published 3 editions of the MUFON Field Investigators Manual starting in 1971, each time updating the contents to stay abreast of the state of the art. One of the primary responsibilities of our state and state section directors is to supervise the training of field investigators. To assist them, Dan Wright, former Deputy Director of Investigations, and Michigan MUFON produced a 1-hour videotape depicting the proper techniques in conducting UFO witness interviews. In 1992, Shirley A. Coyne, former Director of Field Investigator Training, produced a Field Investigator's Handbook for workshop training that was initially distributed to all state and provincial directors for their guidance. After completing the formal training, field investigator trainees are given a 100-question examination, now administered by Kathleen F. Martin up in New Hampshire, who incidentally is the niece of Betty Hill, recently deceased. After receiving a passing grade on the examination, they are elevated to field investigator status. Currently, MUFON has 441 field investigators and another 864 in training. Who are these state section directors we talked about? Each state or province in North America is divided into groups of counties based on population or geographical configuration, where a state section director is responsible for the coordination of UFO sighting investigations, training, and the official contact with police agencies, FAA, airport personnel, and the news and electronic media. Our state and provincial directors are part of that organization, a major part. The success of MUFON must be directly attributed to the leadership and organizational abilities of the men and women who have volunteered to serve as state or provincial directors. Most of these people have selected assistant state or provincial directors to share their responsibilities. In conjunction with MUFON's annual symposium, a one-day training meeting is conducted for the state and assistant state directors as a means of sharing ideas and expanding their knowledge of the latest techniques in ufology, investigations, and research. Regional directors is the next level of management. Both the United States and Canada have been divided geographically into 3 distinct regions, where regional directors have been elected by the membership to the board of directors. They are George A. Filer for the eastern states, John C. Jack Casher, or Dr. Casher, for the central states, and Virgil C. Staff for the western states. And for Canada, Linda Sharon-Brow has the eastern section. Michael Bird, who's sitting here in the first row, has the central section. And Gavin A.J. McLeod, the western provinces. If you're going to do research, you do need trained, educated, and talented people. Currently, MUFON has an advisory board of 138 consultants holding doctorates in their educational fields of expertise, and 140 research specialists with master's degrees in fields applicable to UFO research. A medical committee of doctors headed by John F. Schuessler is engaged in studying UFO cases where physical injuries are involved, such as the Cash Landrum case in 1980. Dr. Robert M. Wood, who is one of the speakers at this symposium, is Director for Research and coordinates the work of the other consultants in many diversified fields involving physics, chemistry, engineering, and the hard sciences. And on an international organization, because MUFON is worldwide in scope, sometimes have fun with and I don't know if it'll happen tomorrow at the press conference or not, but people in New York will ask you, you're from Seguin, Texas. They'll wrinkle up their noses. Seguin, Texas? I said, wait a minute. MUFON's a worldwide organization. We have members in most countries. It's the same distance around the world from Seguin as it is from New York City. That seems to hold them for a little while. I know. Thank you. I don't know if we'll get that question tomorrow or not, Steve. MUFON is governed by a board of directors composed of 9 business directors and 10 functional directors. John Schuessler has implemented the business board of directors to oversee the operation of MUFON and to provide guidance in all MUFON business areas. Dr. Robert M. Wood is a member of the business directors. Stanton Friedman is our director for special investigations, and he's here. And we have Larry Bryant. I don't know if Larry's in attendance, but he's here at this conference. Is Director of Government Affairs, who replaced Major Donnelly Kehoe in that position. Excuse me. The MUFON UFO Journal, our monthly magazine, is our most significant means of sharing UFO sighting reports and vital information with our members throughout the world. Starting in 1970, MUFON has sponsored an annual international UFO symposium where world-renowned scientists, engineers, university professors, researchers, and authors lecture on their particular specialization or contributions to resolving this perplexing scientific dilemma. To provide a permanent record of these presentations, the copyrighted symposium proceedings are published annually for worldwide distribution. And I have brought a few along. It's 1977 in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we do something no other organization has ever done, and that is to publish all the speeches prior to the symposium and make them available at that symposium. And this is a battle. Believe me, been the editor for many, many years. MUFON's 36th Annual International UFO Symposium will be held in Denver, Colorado on July 22, 23, and 24 this year. The MUFON Field Investigators Manual, edited by Raymond E. Fowler, who is probably the finest investigator in the United States over the years, and other specialists, provides effective guidelines, techniques, and suggestions to members conducting UFO sighting interviews and investigations. 4 monographs have been published. The UFO Crash Retrieval Syndrome, Status Reports 2, 3, and 4 by Leonard H. Stringfield, and UFOs, MJ-12, and the Government by Grant Cameron here in the front row, and T. Scott Green from Pennsylvania. And you've heard Grant speak about the presidents, a very fine lecture. We have a staff of 12 people who support MUFON activities and provide services to members throughout the world. One of those is Bruce McAbee, who does our photo analysis on stills. And Bruce is on the program this week. Of course, computers came into the act, and if you watch some of the lectures, but not mine, sorry to say, have been done through computers and beautiful presentations. You can't beat color. Don Withersby over in Ohio established an online database for reporting UFO sightings and documenting the progress of investigations. That is, our reports were put on the computer, distributed to everyone immediately, and you put your information after conducting the investigation right onto the computer. Therefore, everybody had access to it. In 2004, Don had to give up the task. Jan Harzen, who's now on the business board, is now in the process of expanding on the database concept and will soon debut a new user-friendly version. This will be linked to the MUFON website at www.mufon.com. Bill Konkowski established a website and store for MUFON sales. When Bill became the MUFON State Director for Michigan, Pamela Cisneros accepted the task of redesigning the website and the online store. The site has been very successful. All issues of Skylook and the MUFON UFO Journal from 1967 through 2004 are now available on a word-searchable CD-ROMs. Each year is on a single ROM. All issues of proceedings of the annual MUFON UFO Symposiums from 1971, and a few copies here today, through 2004 are now available on word-searchable CD-ROMs. The MUFON UFO files are being converted from paper to CD-ROMs, what we call Project Pandora. The first 10,000 pages are at the screening contractor's facility right now. This work will continue until all files have been converted. People come into the UFO Act every so often. One of those looked like it would provide some very good results was Robert T. Bigelow in Las Vegas, Nevada. Late in 1993, Robert T. Bigelow, a multimillionaire and UFO enthusiast in Las Vegas, Nevada, invited the heads of CUFOS, FUFOR, the Fund for UFO Research, and MUFON to come together as a group to work on projects that might ultimately lead to the resolution of the UFO phenomena. He not only paid the representatives to attend quarterly meetings and their expenses, but contributed a monthly allocation to each organization for administrative costs. The financial plan as proposed by Mr. Bigelow would escalate the monthly allocation in each subsequent year. Every UFO organization needs money to expand their services and to conduct research. Therefore, this financial assistance was a blessing to each group. MUFON utilized part of its allocation to establish and operate a UFO museum and exhibit for the general public on a major highway near its headquarters office in Seguin, Texas. John Schuster reopened the museum in Littleton, Colorado for a 3-year period thereafter. Mr. Bigelow hired Walter N. Webb, who is famous in NICAP circles, as a full-time UFO investigator on an annual salary. When Mr. Bigelow proposed that he should have a vote on the board of directors in his second year as to how his money was to be spent, a representative from the Fund for UFO Research objected and also defended the lack of performance of Walter Webb. Showing poor management maturity, he stormed out of the meeting. Obviously, Mr. Bigelow did not condone such action and proceeded to disband what could have been a very successful UFO research group. Robert Bigelow must be credited for a major accomplishment. He united the three organizations which previously had different agendas and philosophies. So we can thank Bigelow for that. And it gives all of us an important step, and that is, united we can do a lot. Individually, it's very difficult. Thank you. Since the positive teamwork between CUFOS, FUFOR, and MUFON was so successful, the group formed an ongoing cooperative group to be known as the UFO Research Coalition. They in turn sought other financial resources to conduct their research. You've heard the reference to Lawrence Rockefeller here. He provided some of that source, and we're very appreciative. But with his millions, he said it was only his penny money that was used, but that was significant. Crown Prince Hans Adam Liechtenstein contributed significant amounts of money to finance a program to detect the presence of entities in the homes of people who had experienced multiple abductions. And that was a real challenge, but this appealed to the Crown Prince. And he was willing to dole out whatever money it took to prove that abductions did take place and how you could detect them. Tom Dooley, MUFON corporate secretary and an electrical engineer, was hired to supervise and administer this program. Several very sophisticated electronic units were designed and constructed to measure changes in 12 different conditions within the room of the abductee. Each unit recorded the changes and was monitored by a telephone line to a remote master recorder. UFO Research Coalition members recommended likely candidates throughout the United States. All precautions were taken to do a scientific and unbiased experiment. The program was concluded in 2003. However, independent researchers are still analyzing the recordings to measure its effectiveness and success. Most of you probably never heard of this program because we didn't advertise it because we wanted to keep it clean as truly an experiment. The coalition published 2 books. One, Unidentified Flying Objects Briefing Document, The Best Available Evidence by Don Berliner, and Final Report on America West Airline Case of May 25-26 in 1995 by Walter Webb. We're giving you kind of a history of ufology in the United States, and I hope you like it. It'll be great for those who are new in the field. At least that's a personal opinion. How about the news and electronic media? They can either make or break us. Since the 2 major wire services, AP and UPI, consider that UFOs have been around for over 50 years and are thus old news, they seldom make available UFO stories except for sensational events like the humanoid and UFO reports and events in the USSR. We found this applied in the case of the Gulf Breeze, Florida sightings. The director in Atlanta, Georgia, well, first place, all the papers in the southern states, including Florida, published the Ed Walters sightings, pictures and all. When they got to Atlanta, Georgia, the director there didn't believe in UFOs, so he didn't put any of those sightings on the major wire service, so it died in the southeastern part of the United States. When a mock-up of the UFO that Ed photographed was found in one of his former homes, hidden by some debunkers, the gentleman in Atlanta, Georgia put that on the wire service and went all over the world. So you see what can happen right at AP. Conversely, the TV networks have recognized that UFO-oriented programs appeal to the viewing public and are thus increasing them dramatically. NBC TV produced a 1-hour UFO show in December 1974, directly behind the Bob Hope Christmas special, titled Fact or Fiction. I know some of you may have seen that, in which Walt Andrus appeared in a MUFON segment. The CNN TV network's UFO feature was the Larry King program broadcast from Rachel, Nevada, near Area 51 in 1994. On May 17th and 19th in 1992, the CBS television had a 4-hour miniseries titled Intruders from Bud Hopkins' best-selling book. Was the most spectacular UFO program ever presented on a major TV network in the USA up to that time. CBS executives gambled their reputation upon the popularity of UFOs by showing this program during the month of May ratings period. Yes, they had their motive. Cosgrove Muir Productions have featured major UFO cases in their programs for NBC TV titled Unsolved Mysteries. Linda Moulton Howe's 1-hour production for the Fox TV network titled Sightings, the UFO Report on October 18, 1991, received the highest ratings of any program the Fox network has ever shown. Of course, we can't forget Paul David's Roswell, the UFO cover-up by Republic Pictures, who's one of the conference speakers, was a definite hit on television, the theaters, on VHF, and now DVD. In 2000, the Sci-Fi Channel produced a 20-hour UFO miniseries titled Taken by Steven Spielberg, was probably his most ambitious TV project ever conducted. On February 24th, 2005, ABC TV featured Peter Jennings in a 2-hour UFO presentation entitled Seeing is Believing. I won't take a survey because I can't see anybody in the audience due to the lights, but we had great hopes for this program. It was a sad affair because they gave lots of time to the debunkers and even the people that were on the program. When I asked each one what was edited out of your segment, they only accepted the part that debunked the particular study. And that included Bud Hopkins and many more. Stanton Friedman was interviewed for 2 hours and they used 20 seconds. But at least he was in there. Paul Davis has already given a real good talk here on the motion pictures industry, and we'll just skip right over that because I couldn't possibly do it justice because Paul did a fine job. We sometimes wonder who intimidates. Is the government intimidating the TV networks? Are the TV, I should say, intimidating the wire services, or is simply a fact they just lost interest? When it comes to the motion picture made on utilizing UFOs and TV programs, we're getting very fine cooperation, except for the editing on some of these so-called programs. However, the real reason behind it is simply dollars and cents to the industry, because they know without a question of a doubt that the public is interested in UFOs and are going to watch their programs and attend their motion pictures. What is the future for MUFON? We all like to know where we're going. When Dr. J. Allen Hynek moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 1983, he handpicked Dr. Mark Rodinger for the scientific director of CUFOS to be his successor. When I retired as international director of MUFON in 2000, there was only one known person in the entire world with the education, experience, and qualifications to take over the reins of the Mutual UFO Network. He was John F. Schuessler, a founding member, deputy director of administration, and a person with the fortitude and sincere desire to make MUFON a better UFO organization and its continued world leadership position. In the short 4.5 years that he has served as international director, he has demonstrated the leadership, ingenuity, and integrity beyond all expectations during this difficult period after 9/11. Yes, MUFON is in good hands, and I'm proud of John's work. What about the persistency of UFOs? They aren't going to go away. The modern era of flying saucers or UFOs has intrigued the populace of the world for over 50 years. If UFOs are simply just a fad, why do they persist in growing numbers instead of fading into the sunset, which the Air Force had hoped they would? The U.S. Air Force was assigned by Congress to study the phenomena in 1948. Project Sign, which was the first project, produced a positive report identifying the object as probably spaceships conducting a surveillance of the planet Earth. General Hoyt Vandenberg, Air Force Chief of Staff, immediately rejected the report as poppycock and ordered all published reports destroyed. Project Grudge failed to explain away UFOs as its goal. Project Grudge hired Dr. J. Allen Hynek, hoping to explain away all UFO sightings as astronomical phenomena. It was replaced by Project Blue Book, which is nothing more than a public relations operation to receive UFO reports from the citizens. When it became ineffective and an embarrassment to the U.S. Air Force, it was also terminated at the end of 1969 at the recommendation of the Condon Committee. And yes, UFOs can continue to persevere, since the greatest Air Force in the world could not stop their penetration of our airspace. Resolving the UFO enigma could affect the lives of the majority of the people on the planet Earth. Yes, it is important. This is the incentive and motivation that has inspired some of us to devote a large part of our lives to solving the greatest mystery of the space age. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you turn up the lights, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Would you take questions?
I'll take questions if you turn the lights up so I can see who's talking. Who has control of the lights?